started. Hello, welcome. Happy to have you here today. I'm Kirsten Tebby. I'm the founder of Collective Mind, and you are here for Collective Minds Networks in Action. And today is on conflict resolution in networks. So a seemingly hot topic. We had a ton of signups. You never know who's actually going to show up after they sign up. I'm very glad that you all have. Welcome. While we're getting started, why don't we just say hello in the chat? So let's introduce ourselves. Just say hello, your name, where you are in the world today, and if you work for a network or with a network, what that network is. So name, location, network, and we'll just say hello to one another in the chat as we get started. Great. Hello, hello. Wow, we have people from all over the place. Fantastic. Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome from everywhere. That's fantastic. I love to see such a wonderfully diverse group. Happy to have you here. So let's get this started. So I'm putting into the chat a link to the shared slides that we will use today. Hopefully you can open those. We like to use shared slides to use through our sessions as a means to keep everybody on the same page and also to collect thoughts and ideas as we go through these sessions. You are here for Networks in Action. This is one of our regular series. This is a session during which we take a big network topic or concept and we try to unpack it. So if you see, I'm gonna jump down actually to slide 6. If you look at our agenda, it tells you a little bit about how we do that. So we work through a process, a method that is called what, so what, now what, where we sort of tweak that process, that method. But we take those steps. We start with the what. So we start with defining what it is that we're talking about with this topic at hand today, today being conflict resolution in networks. Then we move to the so what. What are the implications? If we've defined this topic, what does that mean for us? How do we understand that? How does that play out within our networks, within our work? And then finally, the now what. So we have this definition, we have an understanding a little bit of what it means for us. Where do we go from here? What do we take away? What are the next steps? What does this look like going forward? So that's our process for today. And I'm even recognizing myself that I sort of, whatever this word is that I'm using my hand to describe, went around our typical process of having you, in fact, say hello in the slides, and just had you do it in the chat, which is fine. As long as we've said hello to one another, that's the most important. The way we kick off these sessions as well is that we start with a little presentation back to you of what all of the registrants, including yourselves, shared in response to the questions that we asked in the event registration. So there's a reason we ask those questions. It's because we use that information in the sessions, right? We want to be as useful here as possible and give everyone as much substance and depth to this as we can. So we asked a number of questions in the registration And you see them, those questions and the responses to them in slides 7, 8, and 9. We didn't actually have as many responses this time as we usually do. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that we're all just struggling with this topic and we're here to figure it out together, or what, but that is what we're going to do. So take a quick look at these slides 7, 8, and 9, and the responses you see here. So the first question we had asked was about the types of conflict that the network experiences or that you experience within your network. So these are some of the responses that we received about that. So quite a wide range of different responses about the types of conflict. Then moving into the next question, it was about how you work with that conflict, how you address it, any processes or mechanisms you might have in place to manage or resolve conflicts. So we have some responses here, different types of approaches or responses to conflict in your networks. And then finally, we asked in slide 9, as you see, what are the biggest challenges or gaps? So what does this mean for you? What are those big challenges or gaps that you're working on, trying to address? So again, some responses here and some threads across the different responses, as you may see as well. So that's where we are as our starting point. We are going to move into this process as I mentioned it, the what, so what, now what. We're going to define what is it that we are talking about when we talk about conflict resolution in networks. Then we're going to talk about the implications for that we face. And then finally, the last step will be, where do we go from here? What do we take away? What do we try to do from here? So this process is going to be in breakout groups. So I'm going to put you in breakout groups, and we're going to, in fact, use the shared slides to capture our notes in the breakouts. So you see there are slides here from slide 11 that we'll use for different rounds. So you see the first set of slides, the turquoise headed slides with the turquoise header, the what, that's what we'll use for our first breakouts. And I will add the room number, which is your group number, into the top of the slide as soon as I set them up. So we'll go into breakout groups. You'll have some time to talk about this question of the what. What do we mean by conflict resolution in networks? You may have to talk about what do we mean by conflict in order to talk about what we define by conflict resolution, right? Just up to you, but might be helpful. So that's what we'll do. We'll take about 10 minutes in the first round of breakouts, and ask you again to please, in your group, capture your notes in the slide. As soon as I set these breakout groups in just a second, I'll add those numbers at the top so you can find which slide you're meant to use. But please capture your thoughts. This is also helpful because we write a summary blog after all of these sessions, and we use the substance of the notes as we do that. So what you're sharing, you can go back to it later through that summary blog, and we'll also be able to share it out with the rest of the world for that matter. So please do capture your thoughts. All right, let me set up these breakout groups. Close. All right. So these are your rooms. You can go ahead and join the rooms, and I will put the number at the top of the slide for you to use to collect your thoughts. And we'll see you in about 10 minutes. All right, welcome back. When people have to be pushed back to the main room, I always take that as a good sign that you are having useful conversations, I hope, at least. So how did it go? Key takeaways, key thoughts from that first round? Anybody want to share something?
I think we ended up having more questions than the question, which was fun. We enjoyed it.
More questions. That's always good, I guess. Other thoughts? Okay. In process. Well, let's take the next step then. I'm going to shift up the groups. I'm going to set them anew. And we will, I'm just setting the groups here. And we'll go to the next round. So we just spoke about the what is conflict resolution? What do we mean by that? I think I can see from some notes here that you also were speaking about what is conflict in order to ground your conversations. So let's go to the next round, the so what. So what does this mean for us? How do we respond to conflict? How do we try to resolve it? What does this mean for us now that we have, at least perhaps with more questions than answers, but at least begun to respond to what we mean by conflict and conflict resolution? Can we talk about what it means for us in our networks now? And we will again go into breakouts, and we will again use some slides to capture our thoughts. So I'm going to set these breakout rooms and I'm going to open the rooms. I think we'll spend about 12 to 15 minutes. I think this is a fairly in-depth conversation, and there's never really enough time for these conversations anyway. So let's go into our rooms. Please use the slides to collect your thoughts so that others can see them. And we'll come back in about 15 minutes. Okay. Welcome back again. I hope that was a fruitful discussion. I was watching the notes being taken, and yeah, really interested to hear your thoughts. One thing that came up for me as I was looking at this and the notes that you were all capturing was that it seems like conflict resolution is very holistic, that we have to come at it from multiple angles, some of which are preventive, some of which are responsive, some of which are just about creating an environment for us to minimize conflict. But I was seeing so many different elements that you were capturing that I was thinking about how holistic conflict resolution needs to be. So very interested to hear your thoughts. What came up for you?
If I may, so in our group, we came across quite a few common challenges, despite being in completely different countries. And one of the things that we feel like different networks are finding different approaches to tackling is around resource sharing, and that in that process, making sure that people who don't gain access to resources don't feel left out or personally attacked. And we were just a bit flummoxed by that one because it didn't seem like we had any clear answers or ways of resolving that sort of problem.
Yeah. Any thoughts about that or other thoughts that were coming up?
Angela and myself, we had good conversation, and we thought of different methods how to resolve certain conflicts, like meditation, positive vibrations to others, and some yogas to help and to include everyone in our circle, not to exclude anyone. And there are certain awarenesses needed, and facts finding, and these are certain things we talked. Angela?
Yes, Sister Shirley. We also touched on the element of when we are in networks, for example, the different dynamics that might exist, that maybe not everyone gets support or funding. So we might see each other as competitors instead of collaborators. So maybe the leaders of the network, or the ones who have the role to coordinate, they can be very careful when getting involved in criticism instead of providing feedback, or even appreciating and honoring when the network collaborates, so fostering this collaborative spirit instead of individual. And I also like something that Sister Shirley shared about moving away from the I and getting closer to the we. And I think that's really important when we work in networks, removing this self-centeredness and actually going into the we. It can be really helpful.
Yeah, I love that point in particular. And then it also makes me think, so to this idea of being very, very holistic, it sounds like the sort of, again, some of the ideas are responsive and some are preventative. And with that, they're personal, right? How do I manage myself? It's the interpersonal of how do we manage those relationships together. And then the structural or sort of organizational of how do we manage, what are the processes, what are the structures we have, maybe mechanisms for communication, for direct conflict resolution, right? But these various levels of how we can think about conflict and conflict resolution. And I think for me, that relates to this other idea around the resource sharing and the potential for people to have hard feelings about it, to see themselves, as you say, as competitors instead of collaborators, and just thinking about how we can, in order to avoid or mitigate, maybe we can't avoid, but mitigate kind of conflict or negative feelings, can we create opportunities and spaces in which we make shared decisions, right? So we all understand what the resources are that we have available, what they need to be targeted to in terms of outputs or outcomes or whatnot. And we make shared decisions collectively in whatever process and method is most appropriate to decide how we're going to use those resources, who will implement the resources, who will receive the resources in order to undertake certain things, right? Knowing that as is pretty much always, resources that are limited, how can we make the best use of our resources within this space? Let's make some of these decisions together. So I think having these mechanisms, not just at the end of we've already got a conflict and people are upset, and maybe it has flared into something more, but in the way that we design our structures, our systems, our conversations towards, again, mitigating and helping people have information, be open and transparent, be accountable to one another. I think for me, I'm hearing all these different pieces that are really integrated into a whole, right? Which makes it perhaps more challenging, but it's something that we maybe conflict and conflict resolution is something we think about at every step we take, right? Other thoughts? We're moving into this now what? What are the takeaways? Where do we go from here? What does this mean to us?
One comment I would share just before we move on is I don't think I would change the essence of what you were just saying, but I feel like the words avoid and even mitigate maybe aren't the right words, because I hear a lot of us talking about, and I feel strongly that a lot of change that we're seeking can only happen through conflict, like conflict and coming to work together with our different perspectives and opinions and our differences is the only way that we can move through and grow and have this new reality. So really kind of embracing the beauty of that and helping us get away from this culture of trying to prevent conflict in all cases, because sometimes we actually want to cause the conflict because that's what's going to help us get where we want to go. And I think I agree with everything you were saying. It was just those two words. I was like, I don't like those words. Thanks.
I love that. And by the way, you don't have to agree with anything I say for that matter. but I love that. The framing, the mindset, the words we choose to use, and what that then means for us. I think that, Susan, what you said, yes, love it. Love it. Other thoughts, other reflections? Okay, direct question to everyone. Where do you go from here? Big, small, doesn't matter. One thought. Where do you go from here?
I can say my personal answer is I want to stalk all the slides here because I feel like I want to continue to gather some inspiration around this topic. It's something I'm really actively working on in my work right now. So plan to look through and see what everyone else's notes were in the conversations I wasn't in, because I just want to gather more thoughts right now about this.
Yeah.
For me, it's mainly because I'm based in Albania, and seeing how many different colleagues from across the world, developed or developing countries, we all struggle with networks. And I know that it's challenging, but at the same time, it makes me hopeful because I know that I'm not alone. And I think this is really good when we talk with each other and also share experiences, because sometimes it might feel like you're failing or you're not doing something very well enough. But that's the complexity of working with human beings across different sectors. So that was nice.
Yeah.
I also feel there are a lot of conflicts in me, within me, and around me. So I started to slowly accept and embrace my own weakness, and whatever way, in my own capacity, whatever way I can help others, I can do, and certain tips I can use. If that tips are helpful for others, I can give them that tips. And also, networking is one thing that I always appreciate and I love, because that broadens my knowledge, my understanding, and I am part of the other. So that I like. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kirsten. I think for me, this really brought forward the fact that we, in my context, the fact that we really don't focus much on conflict. And so perhaps I'm trying to figure out the place of conflict resolution in my context. Not that it's missing, but it's not mainstream. It's not, we don't have systems for it. We don't have guidelines on how to address that. So I mean, it would be very interesting to sort of go back and think through some of the conflicts we've had to navigate in the past, and how, there's a lot of resources I know that have come through from this conversation. So trying to see how, sort of trying to unpack it in my context. Yeah.
I would say that one thing that it's pushed me to think more about is just how, because by the very nature of networks, people assume that everyone wants to work together and collaborate. And in my experience, people don't really chat about interpersonal conflict with other network members. So I'm thinking of ways in which we could have forums or just processes through which people could voice conflict more, rather than pretending that we're all just here to work together and like be nice to each other all the time. So it seems like a very obvious, almost commonsensical thing, but I would say that, yeah, that's something that I've got out of this.
Yeah. Sometimes the most obvious things are the hardest things. Just a little side note. Anyone else? Last thoughts, final thoughts? Okay, well, this has been wonderful. I'm sad I wasn't in the breakout groups because it sounds like you had wonderful conversations. We will share the recording. We will draft a summary blog for you to find in one of our next newsletters. And our next Networks in Action in 2 months, so in April, is going to be on power dynamics in networks. So could also be quite interesting and not wholly unrelated to this conversation. So hope to see you there or anywhere else in between. Thank you so very much for being here, for being present, for being so thoughtful and sharing and all the things. Appreciate your energy. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for this.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.